Very good. I'm Pastor Jeff Duncan. I am the Director of Mission and Ministry at Lutherans for Life. I live in Bellevue, Nebraska, but today I am joining you from lovely Rolla, Missouri. I'm down here for a special trip. I'm going to be speaking to one of our chapters tomorrow, our Rolla area Lutherans for Life, and going to be sharing a life message with them. And look forward to that opportunity. And I'm staying at my host house, and they've provided me a space. So if I get cut off from the internet tonight, our Director of Wife for Life, Michelle Bauman. Michelle, are you on? Do you want to say hi? She'll be on after a bit. She's agreed to make sure that we continue the recording process if something happens and I get kicked off tonight. But let us begin. I want to let you know that our For Life Live does have a website archive so that you can go back and watch our recorded sessions. You can use those for your life chapter or life team meetings, that you can watch them and have discussions about them. It will be on our webpage in a few days after this one. And you can just search in the upper right into the search bar for Life Live Archive, and you'll be able to come to that page. I'll post the page in our chat session in a little bit as well. Also on the opening page of our website, lutheransforlife.org, if you scroll down to the bottom, there'll be a calendar of events, and you'll see that we have other For Life Live events scheduled on the first and third Tuesday evenings, beginning at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. Our next session following this one, April 20th, third Tuesday in April, 7 p.m. Central, we'll hear from a great friend of our LFL organization and the wonderful leader herself of her organization. She is Carol Tobias, who is the president of the National Right to Life. Now, Carol wrote to me earlier today and gave me an excellent summary of the things that she's going to be discussing. Here's what she says. The Equality Act, the Equal Rights Amendment, the For the People Act. What do these bills in Congress have to do with protecting unborn children? Former Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis referred to the states as laboratories, quote unquote, to try novel experiments. How are these laboratories working to protect the most vulnerable among us? What is the Biden administration doing to expand access to abortion and taxpayer funding of abortion? Join us on Tuesday, April 20th, where Carol will provide information on federal and state legislation, court action, and what we can do to protect and promote the sanctity of human life in these challenging times. That's what Carol writes to me. Sounds like a wonderful presentation. I'm going to put a link to the registration in our chat box this evening once everybody gets on. So look for that link as well. So a couple of questions as we begin tonight. Do you remember that terrible sound your computer used to make when it accessed the internet? Now, I'm not going to try to reproduce it, but it really sounded like some deep guttural gunk sound, right? Well, if you do remember that, then this presentation is probably going to be a wonderful eye-opener, because you just might not have kept up with all the progress and fast-paced developments of computers, the internet, various apps, and all the ways that every generation has become vulnerable to technology's invasion into our home and our private space. Now, of course, Jesus has much to tell us of computers, of apps, and of all the technology that he used in his day, right? And we may not realize it, but the Bible does have much to say about the use of technology. For example, Paul writes in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, all things are lawful, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful, but not all things build up. Let no one seek his own good, but the good of his neighbor. Eat whatever is sold in the meat market without raising any question on the ground of conscience. For the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. If one of the unbelievers invites you to dinner and you are disposed to go, eat whatever is set before you without raising any question on the ground of conscience. But if someone says to you, this has been offered in sacrifice, then do not eat it, for the sake of the one who informed you and for the sake of conscience. I do not mean your conscience, but his. Why should my liberty be determined by someone else's conscience? If I partake with thankfulness, why am I denounced because of that for which I give thanks? So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. Give no offense to Jews or to Greeks or to the church of God, just as I try to please everyone in everything I do, not seeking my own advantage, but that of many, that they may be saved. Be imitators of me as I am of Christ. Now, again, that was in 1 Corinthians chapter 10. Although Paul is mentioning food, an application can be made to other areas of life. Food is taken into the body. The internet is taken into the body, not through the mouth, but through the eyes. It invades our brain, our heart. It even goes down to the depths of our lives. So one could properly say, so whether you partake of the internet or whatever you do it all to the glory of God. And we all know that there are plenty of opportunities in our internet age to do just the opposite with the bites that we partake of off our internet plates. Earlier in 1 Corinthians 6, Paul had this to say: all things are lawful for me, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be dominated by anything. Food is meant for the stomach and the stomach for food, and God will destroy both one and the other. The body is not meant for sexual immorality, but for the Lord, and the Lord for the body. And God raised the Lord and will also raise us up by his power. Do you not know that your bodies are members of Christ? Shall I then take the members of Christ and make them members of a prostitute? Never. Or do you not know that he who is joined to a prostitute becomes one body with her? For as it is written, the two will become one flesh. But he who is joined to the Lord becomes one spirit with him. Flee from sexual immorality. Every other sin a person commits is outside the body, but the sexual immoral person sins against his own body. Or do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God? You are not your own, for you were bought with a price. So glorify God in your body. As you can see, both of those writings from Paul have a lot to do with how we glorify God in our body, how we react these days with the internet can be gloriful to God, or it may not be. So as we come to this presentation this night, think about the freedom that you have to exercise whatever joys that you can find in internet and media usage. And as you do, consider whether this experience of joy is helpful, beneficial, and even appropriate for you or for your family members. Remember that your bodies are members of Christ, and you are joined to him in one spirit, and as such, you are joined to your neighbor in Christ and to the church at large. You are not your own, no matter how much the media, the public, or even your own sinful nature wants you to believe that you are. Therefore, glorify God in your body in all things, even and especially the time you spend in using technology and being media wise in this highly stimulated age of connectivity that we exist. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, you have blessed us with the joy and care of children. Give to all parents a calm strength and a patient wisdom, that when the children they bear as your gifts grow in years, they may teach them to love whatever is just and true and good, following the example of our Savior, Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. Well, it's time to introduce tonight's speaker. Kari Smith is married to her college sweetheart, somebody that she met at Concordia, Nebraska. They have 4 children together, ages 17, 14, 11, and 10. She graduated with a bachelor's degree in elementary education and taught for 5 years before becoming a stay-at-home mom for the past 10 plus years. And during that time, she went back to school, earned a master's degree in health education. And one of her greatest passions in life is teenagers. So to help with that passion, she's been leading the high school youth ministry for over 15 years. And currently she works part-time as an adoption caseworker and presenter for Lutheran Family Services. As she was on the Zoom meeting earlier tonight, we had a chance to talk. She's had several adoption cases. Maybe she'll share a little bit about the joys of that role that she plays with Lutheran Family Services as well tonight. She says that she looks forward to sharing technology safety ideas for your home. And she wants you to get a couple of things out of this presentation. Her ultimate goal is to make you aware, to get you to think. And so in order to do that, she's going to share a few points with us. 7 things that you need to teach your children about technology, the power of social media, the reality of online gaming, and she's going to hopefully instill some guidelines that every home should have regarding the use of technology in their home. So I'd like you to welcome our presenter tonight, Kari Smith from Lutheran Family Services, a resident of Iowa, the great state of Iowa. Kari, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. And then get started here. As you said, my name is Kari Smith, and I work part-time for Lutheran Family Service. And I mean, truthfully, we wouldn't be here tonight without technology. So there are many, many blessings to technology, and we have definitely upped our game in the past year with this whole pandemic and working from home and sheltering and everything else. As he had said, I always like to say a little bit more about myself. This is my family. I was born and raised in southern Minnesota. I went to Concordia, Nebraska, and graduated with a degree in elementary education, became a stay-home parent 5 years after we got married. All 4 of our children are there. And in all truthfully, I never had a plan to go back to work. I thought when my youngest Natalie was going to be in preschool, I was going to go to the gym, do the dishes, have meals planned every day, and just be home. And some of you may know Wanda Pritzel. When Natalie was 4 and a half, or 3 and a half, no, 4 and a half, she confronted me and said, "Hey, I have a job for you." And then Natalie started school on September 6th. I started working September 7th. And it's all kind of history from there. I do have a dual role with Lutheran Family Service. I do a lot of presentations for confirmation groups, for parent groups, for Bible study groups, LWML groups, and then I also do an adoption role. And as he said, I do home studies for families that want to adopt, but my favorite part of my job is working along the side of women who have an unplanned pregnancy. In the past week, I had 2 births, 2 adoption placements. The first one, I've been working with the mom since she was 10 weeks pregnant. We had her birth plan, we had her adoption plans backwards, forward, everything. The second one, I was getting ready last Wednesday, got a phone call from a hospital social worker and said, "There's a birth mother that wants to meet with you, and her baby was born yesterday." So Wednesday, I met with her for 5 hours. At 10 p.m., she picked an adoptive family. At noon on Thursday, they drove to the hospital and they took their baby home. It was already discharge time. So every adoption story has a different course. No 2 are alike, but yet God creates life and all life is good. And so we'll keep moving. As he said before, my goal tonight is just to make you think. There are a lot of resources out there, and there's a lot you already know, but when we get into our day-to-day, I mean, we always have our smartphone with us. If we leave home without our smartphone, we definitely start to panic, or we feel, what if someone needs to get hold of me? And I think most of the people on the Zoom remember the day when we didn't have a phone. Remember the day when you just left and said, "I'll be home by 8." And if you weren't home by 8, nobody really worried. And now we can just stalk you. We can find out where you are at every moment of every single part of the day. And so let's keep rolling here tonight. I'm going to try and play this video because it kind of shows it. If you're on social media, you may have seen this, but it's kind of a humorous way to look at teenagers today. If there's no volume, Pastor, will you just tell me? We'll skip through it. Because
Sure.
I'm usually about 50-50 working of it.
I don't hear any volume yet.
Okay, let's see here.
Is there something that you can hit on your side?
Here. So I'm at full blast. So let me try it one more time. Anything? Nope. Okay.
Still don't hear it.
I got a new computer and it doesn't always like my embedded things. Tonight, the ultimate thing, I want you to think about this. And if I was in a room with people, I would hand them a piece of paper right now or note cards and ask you to write each one of your children's name on this card. Because if nature is the blueprint, experiences are the carpenter that create a unique human being. And we all know that every child created by God is unique, but what experiences are in your children's life or your grandchildren's life? You have control of a lot of those experiences. So are they a dancer? Are they a singer? Are they in youth group? Are they in Sunday school? Are they National Honor Society? Whatever it may be, then reflect back. What is missing? What experience are you not giving your child? My husband, one of his closest friends in the world, they go back and forth because he was determined that he did not want to force his children to go to church. And they talked for a long time. If you don't introduce them, they don't know who it is. They don't know what faith is. They don't know what Christ is. And you can see the effects of people that make those decisions. So who are you? I always tell people that you are a parent. You are not your child's best friend. As your parent, you stalk them. You'll flip out on them. You'll flip out on lecture. You'll drive you insane. They'll be your worst nightmare. They hunt you down when needed because I love you. When you understand that I know you are a responsible adult, you will never find someone who loves, cares, prays, and worries about you more than me. Every home has to have guidelines. Every home has to have rules. And I have a 17-year-old and a 14-year-old, and we have very, very specific technology rules, and my teenagers do not like them. They'll tell you that we are crazy or we are unfair, but we've avoided a lot of drama in my home. And not that we're doing everything perfectly, but one thing we do control is the technology in our home and their limits. So as parents, you are the first commander of technology in your home. Whoops, I skipped too fast. I want you to think first about generations. So Generation Y is the millennials. They're born from 1980 to 1994. Then we have Generation Z and Alpha Generation. The Alpha Generation is the youngest one right now. They're brand influences. They have purchasing powers beyond their years. They're shaped by social media, landscape, and popular cultural influences. Most materially endowed generation, most technology savvy. They will enjoy a longer lifespan than any previous generation. They will stay in education longer. They'll start earning years later. They stay at home with their parents. And I want you to think right there. I want you to think back. It'd be my grandparents were born in 1904 and 1910. When my grandfather was 14 years old, his education was complete. He began working on a farm. He started saving his money from 14 to 18, 19. He married my grandma when he was 19 or 20 years old, and they purchased their first farm when they were 21. My grandmother was the same way. Her education ended at age 14. She started learning to cook, can, sew, do all the domestic type things. She never drove a car. And today, when you look at the 21st century, we are extending adolescence. Right or wrong, our children stay in our healthcare till they're 26 years old. We are not forcing them out the door when they are 14. We are expanding education and allowing their brains to develop. But at the same time, we are exposing our children at younger and younger and younger ages to things their brains are not ready to handle. Okay, this Alpha Generation, they're part of an unintentional global experiment where screens are in front of them as soon as they have a pacifier. This has a big impact on things, and we never know it until we get to the next generation. Okay, most of the kids who are Generation Z are in school age right now. 60% say they like their technology because they can collaborate and share knowledge with others. So a positive thing. 93% of students today feel like they're very technology savvy. 50% of Generation Z can live without YouTube, can't live without it. Technology is a must in our schools. And so we are on the outside. We are obsolete, okay? We did not grow up with a Chromebook in our classroom. We did not grow up with our textbooks online. So my next step is I always go through 7 things that you need to know, or you need to teach your children, or just make people aware. The very first one is age appropriate content. There are ratings out there, okay? And they are by the Entertainment Software Rating Board. There's two parts. The symbol suggests appropriate age for games or movies or anything. Content descriptors indicate elements in a game that may have triggered a particular rating or concern. I'm going to move into the next one too, because it kind of explains them a little bit more. Parents out there, you have to realize these ratings are for a reason. We have a lot of children ages 10 to 12 playing mature games. These games have violence, they have adult and crude language, they have sexually explicit content and intense violence, blood or gore. My 14-year-old son, we again in our technology are very careful, and he knows he cannot have any game immature, point blank, okay? But his cousins, my sister's children, his best friends, his neighbor, who we adore their family dearly, are all playing this game called GTA. And so my son came up with this proposal. He wrote it out. It's $29.99. Can I please have GTA? I can play it with my cousin. I can play with it. I mean, he knows how to try and sell a thing. And he was trying too hard, because then I searched. I had no idea what GTA was. And I searched GTA. Guess what? It's Grand Theft Auto. All I had to hear. No, we are not going to have a mature game. You are still 14 years old. I do not want you exposed to this stuff. And I can control it in my home. That is the only place I can control things. And so first of all, look at those ratings. Look at the ratings of your Xbox games, any of this stuff, okay? Public default settings. Now this goes even deeper than for those that have cell phones. Many apps, when you download them, they're automatically set up as public, okay? You need to go through your phone and make sure things are in private settings. I did a similar thing to this when we were in person to a Eldon Mel group, and I was able to find one lady in that group every family vacation she had ever gone to. I could find every house she ever owned. There is a lot of information on the internet that is public. We don't need to help increase it by making our lives public on our apps and things we use, okay? Even Amazon. I'll tell you, Amazon is convenient, but if you go in there, if you have an Alexa or even an Amazon on your phone, they are listening to you. If you say, I'm going shopping, when I did VBS 2 years ago, I needed red life jackets. For weeks and weeks, I was getting ads on all of my technology for life jackets. Your phone is listening to you. There are ways to go in and turn off some of these items. And all you have to do is do little searches. How do I turn off Amazon from listening to me? How do I turn off whatever, Facebook from listening to me? Whatever app you're using, figure it out. Location tracking. Now, this is a big thing with teenagers. A lot of the apps that they like to use have location tracking. They like to be able to see where their friends are. There is nothing safe about this. Last year I created, or 2 years ago now, I created a fake Snapchat account. I went through and I just started inviting every single person who had a public profile in Davenport. Within 2.5 hours, I had 410 friends. There were 5 of them that I could see where they are at home. I could see their private stories. I could see everything, okay? Location tracking is very dangerous. It creates a lot of drama. It creates jealousy among your students, okay? My children know if you're gonna have this app, you have to have your location tracking off, okay? And in Iowa, I can't speak for the rest of the country, sexting is illegal. Even if you are married, you can never send an inappropriate picture of yourself to anybody, even your spouse, okay? It is against the law. Well, teenagers were starting to get in trouble. They were getting caught, police were getting involved, scholarships are getting lost. And so now we have a new problem. We have FaceTime. So if you have a teenager and you know that they use FaceTime with all of their friends all the time. One of my closest friends, their daughter literally has her boyfriend on FaceTime from the minute she gets home all through the night. And the danger of this is if you allow your child to have their cell phone in their room and they are FaceTiming with friends, eventually they're probably going to change in front of somebody. There are ways There are things you just have to teach and say, this is an absolute inappropriate. This is not safe. You do not need to expose yourself. This is not a healthy relationship. There's just nothing good about it. And so why FaceTiming is the newest trend, you have to make sure your children understand the dangers of FaceTiming. When you look at this method here, you can see that when they ask children, and this is children age 8 to 16, so 6 to 8-year-old, 16% of 6 to 8-year-olds in our country have a smartphone. They have social media. So they either have a YouTube page, or they have Instagram, or they have a Snapchat page. 9 to 10-year-olds, it's 26%. 11 to 12-year-olds, it's 52%. Okay, another member of my congregation, when YouTube started to become a thing, probably, it's been almost 10 years. Their daughter was 6 years old at the time, and she asked a very, very innocent question. She searched a very innocent question on YouTube. She said, "What will my chest look like when I'm 18 years old?" The videos that came up on YouTube were not the information that she was looking for. It was very traumatizing for this young girl, and her parents backtracked a lot of things. And I want to ask you, if you were given a smartphone that you could ask any question to when you were 14, 15, or 16 years old, what would you have innocently asked your phone? Innocently asked, just out of curiosity. Okay, you were probably no different at age 14. A lot of it's done out of innocence, but the information your child is finding on the internet is not the information you want them finding. Okay, there's so much dangerous information out there. 28% of 6 to 12-year-olds are on it for their favorite video game. Okay, spending time with people is 24%. This comes to the FaceTiming. My 11-year-old FaceTimes with her cousin every single day. It's innocent, but I can see that she is comfortable at age 11. And 9% go to their favorite website, which will only grow past the age of 12. Okay, age 12 is very, very young to be able to search and find favorite websites. So what is social media? The biggest thing I could say about this is we can't even discuss it because there's over 1 million apps, okay? If you are going to allow your child, this is my biggest piece of advice, if you are going to allow your child to have TikTok, you need to have TikTok. If your child has Twitter, you need to have Twitter. You can go read the dangers of it, but till you become comfortable, you don't understand the ins and outs, okay? I have Snapchat because my 17-year-old has Snapchat. I now have TikTok because my children wanted to see what TikTok was. I can understand the dangers of the apps they have, so we can have the conversation about what they need to go into their settings and what's inappropriate and what's not funny, okay? There are apps out there specifically asking for anonymous things. So if you have a question, you can go to this app, you can ask anonymous question, and guess what? You will get your advice from an anonymous person. Who wants their 13-year-old daughter to go to an anonymous person and get advice? I don't. And I can't imagine there's a lot of parents out there that do. But again, a lot of it the first time is done out of innocence. It's done out of curiosity. It's done because their best friend has it or their neighbor has it. You have to know what apps they have on their iPads, on their smartphones, and whatever it may be. So these are some of the most popular ones right now. Holler. Half these I've never even heard of. Okay. This is an app and it's cute. So if you see it on your 10-year-old's iPad, you may not think anything of it. But the purpose of this is to engage in live video chats with complete strangers. Yes, you're supposed to mark, I am 10 years old and I am a girl. But there's no checks and balances. Your daughter could easily be in a chat room with a 72-year-old man that is looking to just get in a conversation with a young girl. Telegram, supposed to be for age 16 and up. And this one allows you to send videos, text, images, secret messages, okay? They have all these fun stickers. So they challenge you to take off your clothes, cover up your private parts, and send it out. So technically you're not sexting anybody, but you can even cover up your face so nobody knows whose body is. Nothing is healthy for a teenager to be doing this. Lipsy is another one. Okay, Lipsy encourages people to link it to their Instagram account so they can get anonymous feedback, which is very, very scary. Okay, and it's very dangerous for your child to start giving anonymous feedback to other people. The #1 death right now in America for ages 13 through 18 is suicide. Suicide is 100% preventable. And while they're not going to come out and say there's a direct correlation between some of these apps and suicide, we know that these are doing terrible things to our children's brains. Okay. Teleom, I think it is an anonymous texting app. Currently has over 10 million users. I can guarantee they're not all children using this. So why is it so attractive? Okay, it's an easy way for people to hang out with friends. It's an easy way to meet people. You can stay in touch with people near and far. I mean, like I even personally as an adult, you connect with people you don't see very often. Oops. You don't have to miss out on anything. How many Easter pictures did you like yesterday? You can see everybody's life. It's also a fun way to gossip and flirt. You can see a lot and read between a lot of lines. And truth be told, we no longer hand our children smartphones. We hand them our flip phones. We hand them smartphones. We hand them internet. Everyone is doing it. In my house, you cannot get a cell phone until you're 14. My child was the last kid in his class to get a smartphone. And believe me, he felt like he didn't fit in. He felt like he didn't know what was going on. And my husband and I are both like, that's okay. You don't build relationships through technology. You build relationships with face-to-face contact. You build relationships by talking to people, by playing sports, by being at clubs, by doing this. We are going to give you those opportunities. We don't want you sitting in your room looking at your phone for 14 hours a day. It's quick, easy, it's time efficient. Okay. I remember when I thought it was wrong to text my husband if he was upstairs. It is now very convenient. So what are some of the dangers? Cyberbullying. And we're going to get a little bit more into this in a couple of slides. Sexting, we've already talked about that. Online predators. It is a very, very real thing. Pornography. Also very, very dangerous for young males especially. We have addictions, loss of good judgment, explosive marketing, secrecy. So back to our 7 things. Number 5, pictures and videos. We have this world of what we call temporary. You have to teach your children that nothing's temporary. It does not disappear. I've been to several trainings by police departments, and police departments in bigger areas have people online just watching social media to catch people. Now, they're not typically looking for a 16-year-old, but they are looking for the person stalking a 16-year-old, okay? Nothing you put on social media disappears forever. It can all be retrieved. Same thing, anonymous behavior is dangerous behavior. You have to start at a very, very young age. When they're 2 and 3 years old, if you are not happy with somebody, you need to go to their face and say, I didn't like it when you did this. Not write an anonymous letter to somebody saying you're wrong and not put your name behind it. Anonymous things are very, very dangerous and very, very hurtful. And it's exploding out of control with our adolescents. So number 7 is cyberbullying, okay? I'm going to do a little bit further, but these are the big ones that all go under this world of cyberbullying. And this information on this specific slides came from the police department in Davenport. Okay, let me go back. Online gaming is the #1 platform right now for cyberbullying, okay? The World Health Organization has actually declared gaming as an addiction. They are now treating people who are in college for online gaming problems, okay? What you have to realize is some of the dangers of online gaming, okay? There's violence, sexual contact, predators, and you can look at the top games, Grand Theft Auto, Hitman. These games have been around for a long time, and this only goes up to 2013. Grand Theft Auto is still out there with a new one. Okay. They now have other ones that are coming up there, and it's selling by thousands in the droves. And it even has grown greatly because of this pandemic. The dangerous thing is when you allow your child to online game, they have a webcam. They're being watched. Okay. I did a confirmation retreat right before the pandemic, like February, and then it all shut down in March. And I was in the room with just the boys for a little bit, and they were 7th and 8th grade boys. And 100% of them said they have looked at pornography online. 100% of them had said that they have played an online game with a stranger. Okay. They have met people, and people online have been crude or rude to them and have, in essence, hurt their feelings. Okay. It is a real thing. And a lot of times kids will not go to their parents and say, this person did this online to me, or they said this, because what is a parent's reaction? Well, you're never playing that game again. And so they won't go to their parents when something is going on. And then all of a sudden we have a big, big problem. Okay. Children are often instantly drawn to realistic images and fast-paced action of online gaming. Okay. And you can see on the right side, this is a real chat between people. Somebody, either you talk to me or you suffer. I'm going to kill you. And these words are thrown out very easy when you're online gaming with something, because there is no way to stop it or filter it. If you are a predator, okay, your goal in the beginning is to make a relationship. So you meet a 12-year-old kid online, you play with them. At the end of it, you say, hey, that was a lot of fun. Do you want to meet tomorrow night at 8 o'clock? They meet again tomorrow night, and they do this for 2 to 3 months. They might even do it longer. This kid knows this person's identity is how they want to see it. So he could say, I'm 14 years old, I'm from Kentucky. He could even have a fake profile picture. Okay. 3-4 months later is when the danger happens. If they are a predator, they're out to destroy your child's self-esteem, out to destroy who they are. I know of a real story of a young lady that committed suicide. She was 14 years old. And when they traced it back, they had no idea why. So the police got involved. They confiscated all the computers in the home. They went on her thing, and they found out she was in a chat room. This was several years ago when chat rooms were a big deal. And she was chatting with the same person for 7.5 months. So of course you can search IEP addresses. I don't care how hard this person tried to remain anonymous. She was 14 when she killed herself. The guy was 52 years old. And by the end of it, it was, if your parents don't like what you're doing, make them suffer, take your own life. Okay, which seems so extreme, but it's not the only story out there. You have to become familiar as parents with the parental controls on these games. You have to understand the game. You cannot just hand them a video game or an online thing and know, oh, my sister allows her kids to play this, or that family's really nice and their son plays this. That's not, you are the only person that can protect your children. You are the person that has to make the guidelines and the rules, and it's a lot of work. Okay, it is very, very difficult to set it up, and it's even harder to enforce it, especially as they get older. Okay, we allow no devices, like gaming devices, in their bedrooms. If you're not proud to play it on the couch, you're not going to play it in my house. I can also hear a lot of times you can't put your private speakers on. It's just, you just have to have it out loud, because the minute I hear somebody not using appropriate language, who is that? We're not playing anymore. You're done for the day. Okay. Now, what are 3 big facts about gaming? You know what? Professional gamers actually can make real salaries. In 2017, the top esport athlete made $3.6 million. Most high schools now have an esport club. Colleges are even starting to give esports scholarships. Okay, so this is becoming like a looming thing, especially for the younger kids, 8 to 12 years old. Watching video games is now bigger than any traditional spectator sport. More kids would rather watch YouTube of a guy playing Fortnite than they would watch the NFL football game on Sunday night. Okay, it's real in my home too. My son, if you let him, and he's 11 years old, would watch grown men give him tips on Fortnite on YouTube all day long. Okay, of children who have a chance of becoming a professional gamer. In all reality, it's harder to become a professional gamer than it is to become a professional athlete. So, what are we allowing our children to do? It comes back to that very first quote. What experiences are you putting in your child's life? What are you doing to make them the person God intended them to be? Making them whole, okay? We don't totally isolate our children, but we are careful about how much they can be exposed to and when they are exposed. So what are some guidelines you need to have? Well, first of all, it's your home. Electronics devices are a privilege. They're not a right, okay? Just because you are 13 or 15 or 12 or 8, whatever age you decide to give your child a phone, that doesn't mean it's yours for the rest of your life. And you have to be willing to take it away when they're not using it properly, okay? Promise yourself that you are going to become familiar with the apps that they use. This is like my number one piece of advice. If your child has TikTok, you better have TikTok. If your child is playing Fortnite, you will never be as good as they are, but you need to go play with them. You have to understand what they're being exposed to. Also be friends with your kids' friends on social media. I'm a youth group director. I just was sent a snap today of a few students having Friday night, what did they call it on their snap? It was Friday night fireball, okay? We all know that fireball is not legal for a 16-year-old, 17-year-old student to drink. They put these things very willingly on Snapchat. You need to have your children's friends on Snapchat. You need to have your children's on Instagram or whatever it may be, searching them out on TikTok. In our house, we have a password notebook. We don't have a board anymore because the older ones don't want them to see it. If you change a password on your phone, it better be in this notebook. I don't check my kids' phones every day, but I don't need to. They haven't given me a reason not to trust them. But there is times where I go check to make sure the password still works. And if it doesn't work, there's a consequence. Because it's my phone, my home. Even though my children have to pay part of their cell phone bill, it's still my rules, okay? You also have to get familiar with how to review things. Review the internet history, okay? My son, when he was 12, he legally opened Snapchat. He knew he couldn't have it. His older sister busted him, but it's okay. He would log in, he would use it, he would log out, he would delete the app. So I could scroll through the iPad, Snapchat wasn't on there. I have Snapchat because my daughter has Snapchat. When she said, Kyle has Snapchat, I found Snapchat. I found him on there. He went 30 days without touching the internet. Huge consequence. He has not touched Snapchat since then. Okay, create technology hours. Okay, when you guys were younger and your friend wanted to talk to you, they would have to call the landline. It would ring probably in the kitchen. You'd take the phone off the wall and you'd have to drag that cord and stretch it out to you to get to a bathroom and close and lock the door to have a private conversation. It's not that way for our children anymore. They are being beeped 24 hours a day. Okay, they are having they have no time for their brains to unwind. Okay, you have to do what's right in your home and what you're willing to enforce. You cannot just take somebody else's policy because it may not work for you and may not be able to enforce it. No technology. This is every expert I've ever sat through a webinar or conference through. They've always said no technology in bedrooms. Don't let your kids have their cell phone. Don't let them have that temptation to binge watch something at 3 a.m. Don't let their phone wake them up because someone's snapping them. Just be that enforcer. Okay, and the other big one is purchase filtering software. In my house, we have Disney Circle. It's not perfect because it only controls in my home. Our phones have internet. If my children are not at home, they obviously can get on anything in the World Wide Web. There are other ones that you can get like Bark and Parent Something. Do your homework, find the one that works best for you. It is well worth the investment. Okay, the thing I love about Disney Circle is every device in our home has a time limit. And so it will say to me, Natalie has run out of YouTube time, which she gets 45 minutes a day. I don't need to remember to set a timer. I don't need to go chase her down. It automatically turns it off. And in the beginning, it was like punishment, and they would come in the room and they were crying and they their favorite video got cut off and blah, blah, blah. But guess what? They're used to it. They don't ask anymore. The other big thing is parents, you have to be a role model. If you don't want your child sitting on the couch watching their phone all night long, then you don't do it either. If you're going to have a no cell phone hour, you can't have your cell phone either. Okay? You've got to be the example. Okay? In one of the surveys that I recently read, high school students said their biggest disappointment is when they're playing a game. So they're at a basketball game, they're playing, and they look up and they see their parent on their phone. Now, their parent could have looked down for like 10 seconds, and that's the moment the child saw them, and they were disappointed. Okay? You don't let your child be disappointed because you read a text message. Okay? So, little more guidelines. Eat at your dinner table. Don't have cell phones during dinner. Don't have cell phones during church. Driving. We know that distracted driving is becoming a real problem. Again, be that example and also make sure your children are following the same rules. Reviewing internet history, we talked about a little bit. And here's the other one that's the hardest thing in the world. Report electronic activities, illegal things to the police, even if your child is involved. If your child is going to do something when they're 15 years old, that is illegal. You would much rather have the police get involved, the police set them straight, than find out when they're 20 years old. Okay? I know of a Christian university within the last 3 years, an 18-year-old student, actually he was 17, he was young for his freshman class. So he started college when he was 17. He met a girlfriend on Snapchat. She lied about her age. She said she was like 17 also. So she was still a senior in high school. She came to the dorm room. He went to see her. She lived about a half an hour from campus. They developed this relationship because they found each other on Snapchat. And about 3 weeks into the relationship, she's in his dorm room. His telephone rings. He doesn't know the number, but he still answers it. And it was this girl's father. And he said, Kate, I don't even know the girl's name. Is Kate there? And he said, yes. Who are you? And he goes, I am her father. She is 14 years old and the police are almost to you. True story. She was 14. She lied about her age. She was in a relationship with a 17-year-old. He was arrested because in the state, at age 17, you're considered a legal adult. He was kicked out of college because she was not 16 years of age of consent, and his life crumbled very quickly. You have to teach your children that just because you see it on the internet, just because someone tells you that, that does not mean it's real. Okay? Our children fall victim all the time. We can fall victim too. So screen time. Look at your phones. How much time are you looking? This is very easy in your settings. In your setting on every phone, iPhone, Android, you can go right down there. You can even get alerts every one day of the week. Go to screen time. It will tell you. Today, I have been on my phone for 4 hours and 55 minutes. Okay? It will tell you, you can set down times on your phone. You can limit apps on your phones. Okay? You can even block certain content. So you can go to your children's phone and you can set settings up right there to control things. You have to be aware. Over Christmas time, we looked at all the grandkids' cell phones. My 13-year-old niece, her longest in the past year that she was on her phone was 22 hours in a 24-hour span. She literally her average is 16 hours a day that she's on her cell phone. And this was during COVID, okay? She literally has her phone going all the time with Netflix or Hulu or YouTube and constantly having things going. She cannot function without her cell phone, okay? She falls asleep with on. She'll wake up in the middle of the night and say she can't sleep and she'll watch more videos. You have to learn what your children are doing. You have to look for those red flags. Passwords. Okay, your children don't even need to tell you the app. And I didn't know this. My son knew this. He wanted to know what my Pandora password was. And I don't know what it is because I set it up when I set up the free account. If you go into your settings There is a link on it. This is an iPhone. It says website and passwords. I have 71 passwords stored in my phone. I can go there right now. I could click on that website password. It'll give me the whole list. I can click on Domino's. It tells me my Domino's password so I can get into the app so I can get my rewards when I order my pizza. Every single place now is requiring me to have their app to get their rewards. Okay. This is very critical. If you need to confiscate your child's phone and see what they're doing, you can go into this website and add password. I can guarantee they do not have it locked because it doesn't have you automatically set it up. They would have to be very, very intentional. And we train our children from a very young age to allow everything to be saved. Okay. Back in the day, you could probably name your grandparents' phone number, your best friend's phone number, your whatever phone number. How many phone numbers do you know today? We don't dial phone numbers anymore. It's the same thing with passwords. We typically don't memorize our passwords. We allow this to save it, okay? Check it out on your own phone. You also have to remember, and I tell this is like our family verse. We are the clay and you are the potter. We are the work of your hands, okay? Christ created us, Christ is molding us. We have to continue to let him do our work. We have to be careful what we're exposing ourselves to. I know that I only have my children for 18 short years. And while I will love them forever, I want to mold them to be strong enough with the help of God to be able to enter this world and to be strong. So I'm going to open up. I'm a couple minutes short of 8 o'clock, but Pastor, do you have anything else? There's my contact. If you want to email, text me, doesn't matter.
Yeah, would you mind, Kari, putting your email and contact phone numbers into the chat session so that as this goes away, we have a couple of questions. Daniel Johnson wrote one. Daniel, if you're on, would you mind asking that question to Kari?
Hi, Kari, and thank you for all this useful information. I put my question in the chat, but I'll go ahead and read it to the group. A related problem is the unique role played by the big tech companies, which have shown themselves to be hostile to Christian, traditional, and conservative values. It is possible to deplatform from these companies, a process I've started. For example, one can use DuckDuckGo instead of Google, MeWe instead of Facebook, Parler instead of Twitter, etc. What are your thoughts on this and big tech generally?
Yes, but for me, it's easier to just not be on social media. But having children in public schools for high school, I will never convince my daughter to go to something else because no one else around her is doing it. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying, but I mean, to play devil's advocate here, on the other hand, you have set down rules. Certain things are not allowed to do. It would seem to me if you got a critical mass of people, for example, moving to MeWe, then Facebook would be financially challenged rather quickly. Right. And that can only help our cause.
Oh, I agree with you 1,000%. And truth be told, my children aren't on Facebook. I am blessed. I'm very, very lucky, but I think partly it's because my daughter she's 17, did not have any social media till she was 15. She doesn't enjoy social media like most of her friends do. She's a 3-sport athlete, and so her temptations are not like a lot of her friends. And as a youth director, the world is working very hard indoctrinating them. And I think our biggest thing when you work with any group is relationship. You want to make sure they know that you care. I think there are a lot of good Christian platforms out there and a lot of momentum moving in the right direction. If you have not watched The Social Dilemma on Netflix, promoting social whatever, watch it because it is truly like it has the former CEO from a lot of social media companies, okay? One of the top guys from Google who's not there anymore. And they just do interviews about how each person on a phone is an algorithm. and how that algorithm works to continue hooking and building to weaken people and get them to keep searching things. It's a very, very well done documentary called Social Dilemma on Netflix.
That's why I like DuckDuckGo, for example, because they don't keep track of browsing history and they don't keep track of searches either. So
now what we need to do is we need to get a major computer company to make that your automatic install. Because a lot of people over a certain age, when you buy a computer, you're going to use what they have on it. And to switch to a platform is not going to be their savvy thing to do. If that makes sense?
Understood, but freedom always requires some degree of effort to keep, right? I mean,
Yep,
I was thinking the other day about the disciples and what they went through, the beatings, the imprisonments, and so forth. And we can do a lot as Christians just by taking some effort to disengage from certain platforms. And I realize that's an inconvenience, but think of the benefits.
Oh, it's a huge benefit. And I mean, I know there's several pastors on here too, and pastors have a big role in like even bigger than social media, but in just promoting life. Okay, our world is telling us life is not valuable, but we're all sinners. Okay, I've met some pretty amazing women in my career now that have had abortions, and that abortion played tolls on them. And if I can get them to find forgiveness because Christ is going to forgive them, that is amazing. Okay. As churches, and we are the church, not just the pastor, we need to make sure, starting locally, what are those safe ones? Because most people don't know.
Kari, are you still there?
I'm here. Yep.
Oh, okay. All right. You stopped for a second. I wanted to make sure that you were at the end of your statement there. Daniel, thank you for that question and that insight. I as you listed some of these, DuckDuckGo instead of Google, MeWe instead of Facebook, Parler instead of Twitter. I'm also curious and need to keep this in mind, I believe. The devil uses anything that we call good in order to twist it and make it into bad. And so while DuckDuckGo may not be a search engine that tracks where we go and do the advertising correlations, you can still use it to search for the bad things that you want to look at because your sinful nature wants to look at it. While MeWe may be a different platform than Facebook, there are still going to be people on MeWe who have as their profile or their intent sharing themselves in inappropriate ways so that they can be sexually titillated or get somebody else involved in sexual temptation as they are. Kari, would you agree with this as well?
I definitely agree with you.
So when it comes to all of these companies, now you've said, within your own family, you have these, the times that you can control how they're on, you have the passwords. Do you ever sit down and talk about where are the places that you've gone? Now you have the ability to look at history, but do you talk to them about where they've gone and why they've gone there and what happens when they fall? As I've heard, the average age now for seeing the first pornographic image of any kind is fallen down below 10, maybe even down to 8. Is that right?
Yep, that's what I've heard recently too. Yeah. It is. I mean, with every conversation, here is what parents run into is they're scared their child's going to ask a question they don't know how to answer. It comes down even when they're 3 years old and they say, "What's that?" And you suddenly become embarrassed. Okay. You have to just kind of break the mold and break the ice. And I remember the first time we sat with our daughter, we were probably more embarrassed than she was. But after we realized there's nothing to be embarrassed about. This is who you are. This is who God created human beings to be. Females are females, males are males, and they have commonality between the two bodies. And comes back down to those things. We don't want this in our house because we don't want you exposed. And my children say too, you don't trust me. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. I trust you, but I don't trust the internet. I don't necessarily trust some of your friends' parents. And we have a great open dialogue with our 17-year-old of, I will say, are you telling me I'm incorrect that if I let you spend the night at this person's house, that their parents are going to have rules? And she'll say, no, they probably won't. Okay. But it's bringing myself to her and letting her think and come up with the answer, not casting I'm the dictator of this home and this is my law. You convince me that this is okay. I mean, in essence, I say we have a lot of rules, but we don't have a set curfew. You tell me where you're going to be tonight and what time you're going to be home. We can do this. You haven't given me a reason not to trust you. Okay. We are just starting to enter it with our 14-year-old. We don't even have a cell phone yet because typically we do it after 8th grade, and it just hasn't happened yet. With COVID, he didn't go anywhere. We didn't need a phone. You don't need to call anybody. You can do it this way. And a lot of the conversations with your children, don't overthink them. And it's okay if they ask you a question, you say, I need to think about this for a little bit. I need to give you the right answer. But you have that open thing. Why don't I want you to have this app? Well, this is what I see on it. And this is what I find inappropriate. I don't ever want you laughing at this, or making fun of someone's body is not funny. It's hurtful. Anonymous. We've had a lot of conversation about the anonymous apps. If you have a question and you don't want to ask me to my face, my daughter and I, for years, we had a notebook, and really she only used it when she was mad at me. And she would write me a letter and saying, I can't believe you didn't let me go do this. And then she would put it on my pillow. Sometimes I would take a day or two. Sometimes I would respond right away, but I would write her a letter back, and then I would put it back in her room. And that was a great way for us to start a conversation. And now we're close, and I'm not afraid to say anything to her because we have a trust, but you have to build that, and it's consistent.
Good, thank you. If you would stop your screen share at this point, unless there's still some more that you want to share with us. Thank you. As we continue in this, I know you mentioned that there are other pastors on here, but even as parents, Kari has made it your priority to know what your children are doing and to teach them. And in terms of making this a life issue, it's very important that our children understand their sexuality as male and female, how God has created them. In the image of God, you have been created, male and female, you have been created. There is a uniqueness to whom you are knit together in your mother's womb. And the sexual temptations, the acting out, the bullying, these things destroy this uniqueness. And we have this ability, we have the calling, the vocation that God has given us as parents, to be the protector, to be the trainer, to be the equipper of these children, these gifts that God has given us, so that they understand all of the gift that they are in His creation, and that they affirm that their life is good just as they are created. And this is one of the things that many of these apps are going to try to destroy, the image of God in which they have been created. Kari, do you have anything to say about that image, or how these apps and websites do this particular activity?
I mean, I think a lot of it goes even deeper. Like, I think of my line of work, which I have a 17-year-old daughter, and I don't know how many conversations I would be having with her if I didn't do what I did for a living. And I'll tell you, in the past 6 months, not 8 months, less than a year, I have had 2 clients that have placed their children for adoption. They were both seniors in high school. They were both amazing student, like a 3.9 GPA. They both had a church home. They both were with their significant other for almost 2 years, all of high school, basically. They both like, they both have college plans, college lined up. They're national honor students. They are like the token child. Even when you talk to their mom, they're like, my child has never broken a rule. Like, I can't believe she was having sex and I didn't know it, even though I know she's had a boyfriend for over 2 years, but we've had this conversation. And so it goes even much deeper. Are you, having conversation of what is abortion? What is a life? Physician assisted suicide. I mean, all of these go in this topic because internet's doing far more than just, it's warping them to what's supposed to be accepted. And it's devaluing human life when we just are exposed to things. I mean, I have good kids in my youth group that are struggling with their identity because the world tells them if a boy doesn't like me by this point, I must be gay. If I haven't had my first kiss by this point, maybe, or if I'm not really attracted to boys, maybe I'm a girl. They're real problems. And I live in Davenport, Iowa. Okay. I don't live in this great big metropolitan area. I mean, it's happening all around us. We have to really, really just, have that open conversation with our children and let them express, because they probably have opinions and their opinions are coming. I mean, look at the politicalness in our world. Okay. It's like, you can't be in the middle of the road. You either have to be this way or you have to be this way. Well, have the conversation with your child. Where do you stand on certain issues? Starts with technology, it starts with online gaming, it starts with phones or social media, but it goes much deeper. Okay. A lot of young, amazing kids graduate from high school, go to college, and all of a sudden fall off in their moral compass. And I'm not just meaning drinking, I'm just saying they become very, very anti-life. And it's, first thing as parents, always pray for your children. I know I don't have to reiterate that or say that to you multiple times, but if you were planning this moment to have this, okay, I'm going to sit down, we're going to talk about this and this, you can't really force it. Okay. You have to kind of let it come naturally. Or when you watch things together and say, okay, what do you like? Even certain movies, you can watch it together and you can find it funny, but what's not okay here? What is this making a joke today? I mean, I think I can think of the shows I watched. They were pretty innocent back in the day compared to the things that my children want to watch, of the innuendos and what they're trying to say is okay socially.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. And I think that's a responsibility in an area that many parents have given up on, and wrongly so. They need to take the time to take back that television and the computer screen and the digital platform on the phone, and do have that conversation. Watch the things together. If a child wants to play the video game, say, okay, let's play it together. Let me watch what you're doing as we play this. And then if it isn't appropriate, as you said, Kari, then you have the ability to say, no, explain it. Here's why this isn't appropriate. Here's why this tears down the image of God that you've been created in. Here's why this innuendo of this family living together as a modern family tears apart the Holy Trinity and the image of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit in father, mother, and child, the two becoming one flesh. And so you have this opportunity to explain these and reinforce these and help them understand when they go to school or when they interact with other children who may be speaking differently about this, how they're going to react and have that conversation with those other children so they don't feel excluded or weird or singled out because they have a difference of opinion. They're learning how to navigate and talk about the real issues of religion and who they are in God's kingdom at that time. Luke, you have a question. If you'd like to ask it for Kari, if you're on.
Yeah, I was just curious about if you have any recommendations on, books or other resources to kind of help guide the conversation with maybe the preteen age, pre-puberty kids, so that way you can have a Christ-focused conversation and also talk about some of those very emotional, puberty type issues as these kids are growing and aging in these areas.
I actually do really like the books on CPH, and they have them for a couple different age levels. I think they're a very, very good starting resource point. From a very, we think our children don't quite understand things, and some of them are very innocent and naive. But the minute you see a show when they're in the same bed, the wheel is starting to turn. And if they have access to internet, they can start asking questions. Okay. My 11-year-old this year, so we have a family friend, a family relative actually, that had a child out of wedlock, 6 years old. And my son came home and said, "Why didn't you tell me I had a new cousin?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" Because we prepared him. We said, we've always said from the beginning, God intends husbands and wife to have babies together. And that's kind of been our carte blanche when they're little. And with our 11-year-old, we really hadn't got to the point because he's never seemed curious on the physical act of things. But when we came home from visiting all of our family, he said, "You want to know why?" And I was like, "What cousin are you talking about?" And I'll just call our nephew Luke. That's not his name, but he said, "Well, Luke has a baby." And I was like, "Yeah, and you met him. He goes, but Luke has to be married in order to have a baby. So where's his wife? And why didn't you tell me? I have another cousin and his wife. You told me about Gideon, but you didn't tell me about his wife, which he never got married. Okay. She's not in the picture." And so all of a sudden it was a very, how do I want to connect these dots? And it became very simple of, you know what? Not everybody follows God's plan, but God wanted Gideon to be born. Gideon is alive. We love Gideon. And Brett did make some good decisions in relationships. But it comes down, like I said, sometimes when they're little. When I talked to my daughter, when she was probably in 7th and 8th grade, I was like, "Oh, how is she going to react?" But actually, she was ready for the conversation. And now it's very easy for me to say, "Okay, I have a feeling your friend who is going out with her boyfriend every night is probably having sex." And we can have this open dialogue because my children know what I do. They know that I place children for adoption and in situations where the parents can't care for their children. It's very easy for me to say to my children, they get it. If you don't want to have a child, you can't have sex, because they can see it in my life. They see that happening. I do think CPH is, and that's what it is. It's a real comprehensive sex education. But as a parent, don't overthink it. My mom handed me books and said, "Read these. If you have questions, come ask me." I didn't go ask her anything because she made it seem like she was uncomfortable to talk to me about it. That's why she threw books at me. I didn't want to do that same thing with my children. So every one of them has been a little bit different. But if we watch a movie and this is happening, this is my opening. This is my door of going, I need to start having this conversation. There's not a right or wrong way. You have to know your child. I know a lot of parents think their children aren't doing things they're doing. They are. Okay. They know what a lot more is than what you know, what you think they know. And so be very straightforward. I don't want you to give yourself to someone before you're ready. And we know that the Bible says that this is meant for marriage. So until you're ready to get married, I don't want you to share this with anybody else. This is what God wants you to share with your spouse, or the person you're going to commit to, your spouse. I don't know how you can convince me that's not the best thing for a relationship. And then encourage, both of my amazing clients in the last year that were 18 years old, 4.0 students, they both conceived their children in one of their parents' home because their parents trusted them. Their parents thought they're they're smarter than this. Okay. you guys all know you were once hormonal teenagers too. Don't expect your children to not be hormonal teenagers. So open the dialogue, explain to them why you don't want it. But then if something happens, love them, you know, embrace them. Yes, Patty?
We could have used you when I was in my teens and 20s. I'm 69 next month. We could have, we didn't have the technology and all that.
Right.
But when we were growing up, we had our awkwardness, and parents didn't really want to talk about sex and everything like that, what happens afterwards. And I was lucky that I didn't get pregnant.
I don't think parents want to talk about sex today. I don't think that 50, 60 years later, it's much better. I know that it's always a difficult conversation. Some of those resources, the Real Comprehensive Behind Comprehensive Sex Ed by Heather Roish, it's available at CPH. Teaching Children Chastity for Life, Talking Points for Christian Parents, by Marie McPherson and her husband, Ryan McPherson. Also available from CPH. Lutherans for Life is behind all of these publications. A Lutheran Catechism on Abortion and Life. Again, these are all excellent resources that you can go through. And these are going to give you as parents some talking points, some ways to bring up the conversation with your children. Kari, I think you're absolutely right. There is ample opportunity in our daily life. When we see these things happening, it gives us an opening to the conversation. And it doesn't have to be in complete detail, but we can at least broach the subject and begin to converse. We can ask, what are your friends thinking about something like this? Because we know right now they're being inundated by all of the social media, by the television programs, to think, especially when it comes to the LGBTQ, whatever the alphabet soup is now, for sexual identity and gender dysphoria, all the things that are being pushed. And they're actually, like you said, questioning, well, if I've not had a sexual feeling by age 11 or 12, what's wrong with me? And why don't I know what direction I'm supposed to be choosing in life right now? I don't feel like it. So what's wrong with me? We need to have this conversation. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not supposed to feel this conversation, this identity at this point.
But remember, God didn't create us to struggle. And so with every teenager I work with, if you are struggling with something, that's the devil. He's the one making you doubt who you are, making you doubt your identity, making you doubt your core. You need to be lifting yourself up in prayer, every day. Pray. Lord, help me love myself for who you made me to be. It's a pretty powerful prayer because no one's perfect.
Yeah, excellent point. Roni, you had some comments on the physical aspects. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. And thank you again for this wonderful presentation. The information's super helpful, and I'm going to recommend to people at my congregation to watch this after the fact for sure. But just on screens alone, aside from the bad content that kids can be accessing, just the impact of screens alone, the blue light from screens can suppress melatonin, and teenagers are especially susceptible to that. And I've seen really nasty sleep disorders, sleep rhythm disorders in kids that are watching, that are sitting at their screens into the night. So even if you have a kid reading the book of Concord on the computer into the night, it could still impact their sleep. And I think that's part of the problem your niece may be having as well, is just the blue light exposure. So I just wanted to throw that out. So you're very wise to limit screen time.
I've had 3 families in the past year tell me that their child has insomnia. And when you dig deeper, I don't think it's insomnia. I think the result of how much hours they are playing their games or on their screens is resulting in them not being able to sleep.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely insomnia. and the fix can be very difficult, can take a long time. So
Yeah.
it's something they should definitely talk with their pediatrician about, and they may need actually pediatric sleep physician to intervene
Right.
and help get them back on track.
And Kari, thank you, Ronnie, for that that comment. And I think this is something for us to explore, especially when it comes to parental control of screen time and using the technology wisely. Kari, you touched base on this a little bit, and I don't know if you want to say any more, if there's some additional information you can share with us, but technology, and especially certain images that we receive in technology, can actually remap our brain. It can cause the release of the endorphins that create the responses that heighten our awareness, and it can actually cause those addictive behaviors to increase in us. How do we, if this has begun, how do we wean our children away from it? And how long does it take? Is there any research that tells us how we trace the mind or get away from this so that we can eliminate those tracks, or things that we can do to help reverse the damages that have been done, or the pathways that have been produced?
Well, I mean, similar to what Ronnie says, I do think if you feel that it's a real problem with your child that you cannot just wean yourself or correct yourself, talking to your pediatrician is important. If they are teenagers, even Christian counseling, like I cannot think of a better source. Like I've referred a lot of teenagers to a Christian counselor this year because their problems are bigger than I can handle. The problems are bigger than I have the time to dedicate to them. And they are so broken from years and years of things I don't know about. And that's not my role. As a parent, sometimes your child is not going to confide in you for a gamut of reasons. It's not personal necessarily, but it's because you're their parent and they don't want your consequence. And so if it is something that needs help, you need to find referrals from counselors or pediatricians. I think in a lot of what you're saying, what I often associate a child's brain is like a chia pet. And I mean, we all know at our age, we know what a chia pet is you put the green stuff on and water, you nutrient, and it grows and grows and grows. But if you cut it, it's cut permanently. Our children's brains are like that. They're growing faster and faster and faster. We have to prevent them from having a major impact that is going to stop that from growing. One of the conferences I attended a couple of years ago was all on ACE. They're called Adverse Childhood Experiences. And a lot of times things that happen in our childhood, we don't remember them, but they have played an adverse impact of who we are as an adult, an adverse impact of who we are going forward. And we have to a lot of times identify some of the things that happens. I volunteered at a place called 180, and they've all served prison time. They range from age 18 to 63. And a lot of times where they are today is a direct result of their environment growing up. And so you have to start to determine, why are you the way you are today? What happened in your past that has caused an adverse reaction in your brain? What is your trigger? Because we all have ACEs. I mean, we all have things that we don't process and think about. In this example from my life, when I was in 8th grade, my mom had a stroke. She was in her mid-40s. I don't know, my siblings and I were just talking about this, and we don't have a lot of memory of her first stroke, but I remember going to the hospital with my grandparents, and my dad was already there, and my mom was hooked up to tubes, and she was pretty much unconscious, and my youngest sister would have been 8 or 9 years old. And I remember her crying and asking the doctor, who was a fabulous doctor, is my mom going to die? It didn't matter what the doctor said to us, because in my brain, I didn't realize this for years and years, but I remember saying, I will take care of my siblings for the rest of my life, my younger 2 sisters. I, as an adult, I am very emotionally guarded, and I never knew why, but now I know my ACE in life was that situation and that fear of losing my mom and my sisters losing their mom. And I made a valid promise to myself. we all need to examine ourselves. And this is a lot of times our teenagers, that first quote, what experiences have happened in their life? You know, are you in a divorce situation? Okay. You know, is there abuse? Is there something? Is there neglect? Are they not getting what they need? We have to just evaluate individually to families in our congregation. I don't know if I really answered your question, but did I kind of get there?
Yes, I think you did. And I appreciate that. It's getting to the 8:30 time, and I know some of you may want to leave. Kari has said she will stay and continue a few more questions afterwards. I do want to remind you that on the 20th, 2 weeks from now at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern, we'll hear from Carol Tobias, the president of National Right for Life. She's going to cover some of the new legislation that's happening not only in the nation, but in individual states, and try to give us some important guidelines and information on how we can, as life groups, life teams, and chapters, be responsive and know what's going and how we can move the life issues forward within our own legislatures, both the states and at the national level. So I hope you'll take a look. Earlier in today's chat box, I did put a link already for the registration for that Zoom. It's at the very top of today's chat box. I can copy that again and put it at the bottom if you came in late. I'll make sure that it gets put at the bottom again and you can look for it. At this time, I'm going to say goodbye to our recorded audience, and please hang on. But the Lord bless and keep you, and we'll look forward to seeing you in a